What is a scientific fact that you know is true, but it still blows your mind that it's real? The T-Rex is closer in time to us than it was to the Stegosaurus. Dinosaurs were here for a very long time. Cleopatra lived closer in time to the opening of the first Pizza Hut than she did to the construction of the Great Pyramids. Cleopatra wasn't Egyptian either, so maybe it's more appropriate to call her closer to the opening of a Little Caesars. There are colors that other species can see, but we can't. Damn, I really want to see a new color. I teach 5th grade. Their minds were blown when I told them the sun is a star. I think a couple of them wanted to fight me over it. The distances and sizes involved in astronomy. Stars thousands of times the size of the sun, objects millions of light years away. It's unfathomable. You can fit all of the planets in our solar system between us and the moon. Like, I understand the concept that I'm a sack of trillions of atoms interacting with each other through an incredibly complex system of molecules, but it still just feels like I'm sitting here doing nothing and browsing Reddit. Always blows my mind. There are roughly 7 times 10 to the 27th power atoms in the human body. That's more than a trillion trillions, or more than a billion billion billions. Lake Washakim, a lake I live on, lost about 3.5 feet of water from the start of May to the end of August last year. It's a 90-acre lake, so that's about 103 million gallons. That's about 860 million pounds of water, or about 430,000 tons of water. That's about 3,500 tons of water a day, 146 tons of water per hour. 82 pounds of water leaves my lake every second, almost entirely by evaporation in the summer. It's a really small lake. Most people call it a pond. The fact that DNA can make all these different forms of life out of just 4 bases. And every computer program ever written is made out of just 2. A lot of the power and variety comes from the hardware that runs it and interprets the data, which can't actually act on its own. But without the information, a computer would just be a lump of silicone, and a human would just be a lump of goo. For every grain of sand on every beach on Earth, there are over 10,000 stars in the known universe. There are more atoms in the amount of salt that can fit in one hand than there are stars that we can see. Things don't get cold, they just lose heat energy. Cold doesn't exist, it's just low heat. Also, technically, black doesn't exist either. Everybody here is so scientific, but I was thinking, wombats have cubed poop. Tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplants were cultivated from the nightshade family of plants. Cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, collard greens, and savoy are all cultivars of the same species, Brassica oleracea. The black mesh on the front of microwaves works by physically blocking the waves because the waves are so big they can't fit through the holes. Gödel's incompleteness theorem is up there for me. You can prove using only arithmetic that there are true statements about arithmetic that you cannot prove using arithmetic. The proof involves encoding statements about numbers into numbers, and then breaking the fourth wall to let one side of an equation represent facts and the other represent numbers. Reading the proof twists your head so much more than just reading the theorem. Pi is a number that goes on forever, but it's still less than 4. Most of what makes up your body, everything apart from some hydrogen, was once part of a star. 1. There are colors and lights my eyes cannot physically see due to not having the biological hardware needed to do so. 2. Each one of my eyes sees colors differently. 3. Sometimes I have mental input lag, and though I can see something quickly, my ability to react to it just as quickly is limited by my physical abilities. 4. I could simply die at any moment from a large number of random variables, and I might not even get to be able to acknowledge my death. 5. The most dangerous thing I do daily, by a very wide stretch, is drive a vehicle. Not so much a fact, but the general knowledge humans have about outer space is just amazing to me. I'm just a layperson, but I still have a wealth of knowledge about our solar system just from my basic schooling. Add to that my access to the internet, and the amount of information just anybody can get is simply astonishing. I don't think most people appreciate that as much as we should. The first time I knew that the internet would truly change the world was in July of 1994, when Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 crashed into Jupiter, and I could see the NASA images within a few minutes of it happening. It blew my mind when I realized that everything would be like that going forward. Late to the party, but the fact that you're never really touching anything, it doesn't so much as blow my mind as it does make me upset and uncomfortable. I'm going to die one day, and then what? The size of the universe is not only growing, The growth is accelerating, and many of the earliest galaxies have such a strong red shift that we needed to build the James Webb Space Telescope so that we can image them in infrared, since Hubble has reached the limit of what we can see at visible wavelengths. Quite literally, Hubble has reached the universal equivalent of draw distance in a video game, and eventually James Webb will do the same thing, in the far infrared. At some point, we will stop seeing modern galaxies, and theoretically start seeing the early proto-universe, assuming James Webb is sensitive enough to detect it. Bonus mind-blowing fact, that observable distance is related to time. The farther away you look, the farther back in time you look. Luckily, we have satellites like the Cosmic Background Explorer, or COBE, that can image the moment the universe stopped being opaque, redshifted all the way into the microwave spectrum, and long before any galaxies were even thinking of coalescing. Not to diss James Webb, because it's pretty kick-ass and high resolution in addition to being able to see really far back in time. The fact that you can't go faster than the speed of light. That the majority of the oxygen on the planet comes from the plants in the ocean. A lot of me is just empty nothingness. I have seen more of the surface of the moon with my own eye than the surface of the Earth, just from really far away. How many asteroids are actually orbiting the sun and flying around Earth? It is crazy to think about. Radio waves. Totally get the science, but what the hell is that crap about? Like, music is transported on invisible lines that zap the sound into my car, and the dash shows words that tell me what the name of the song is, and what my ears absorb those lines, and I am jamming to music? What? That caterpillars turn completely to goo inside the chrysalis before turning into a butterfly. They basically break down totally, then become something new. It's wild. That's a common misconceived debunking of a misconception that's not actually a misconception. All the caterpillar's organs stay in roughly the same place. Imaginary numbers. And who came up with that name? They're almost challenging me not to believe in their existence. You should check out quaternions sometime. They're like imaginary numbers, but 3 times as imaginary. Oxford University is older than the Aztecs. Perhaps the fact that blows me away the most is the idea that the universe exists at all. Really think about it. Why is there a universe? How did the Big Bang start? And what is outside if there is the universe? This fact scares me more than death. All the planets in the solar system fit between Earth and the Moon, only if you align them with their poles, or take the largest Moon/Earth distance instead of the average one. We are hurling through space at an amazing speed, and we don't even feel it. Not only is the Earth revolving on its axis, but it is also moving around the Sun, and the Sun is moving within the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is moving through the universe, but we don't feel a thing. Don't know about the Milky Way moving around the universe, but the Sun is traveling about 500,000 miles per hour around the galaxy. We've literally flown 1 million miles between the time you posted your message and I read it. This would be really weird with time travel. If you traveled 100 years back in time, you would also have to travel to another place in the universe to end up on the same place on Earth. That eventually all of the energy in the universe will be evenly dispersed and will be as close as possible to absolute zero, and nothing will be able to happen pretty much. I think the Big Rip theory is more terrifying than heat death. The universe is not only expanding, it's expanding at every point at a growing rate, meaning that the space between the nucleus and the electrons is, you guessed it, also expanding, but the atomic force pulls the electrons back in line faster than they are getting pushed back, for now. The Big Rip states that there will be a point, because of the increasing expansion rate, that the atomic force will be too weak to counteract the expansion, so every atom, every group of particles in existence, will be ripped apart. And because the expansion will be faster than light, at this point every particle will be doomed to wander the universe alone, never grouping up again. There are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way, about 10 times more, really. That there's a spooky, scary skeleton inside me right now. Consciousness. One day you're just floating in warm liquid without a care in the world. A few weeks later, you're aware of things and taking careful notes about what happens to you in case it becomes important later. It seems if I raise my voice loud enough, they'll come back into the room and give me food. At what instant do you pass from non-conscious to conscious? And what are you doing while you're not conscious? Do your thoughts count as thoughts, or are they just bright stripes and shapes caused by bursts of electricity in your brain? When do you have your first bona fide thought? What is a thought? My first memory was something weird. I remember wandering into the living room after breakfast and stopping dead in my tracks at the realization that I was alive. It felt like the very first thing. From then on, it has been a constant stream of memories forming. It's like the transition from animal to human. I described the house to my mom, and she says that I had to have been 2 years old. That every time you shuffle a deck of cards, it is statistically more likely that this new combination has never been shuffled by anyone in history. Not just yourself. You can crunch the numbers and it adds up, but it's just so crazy when you have those 52 cards in your hands. How can this be true? If we were right now in another place, about 65 million light years from Earth or something like that, using a special instrument, we could see dinosaurs. Maybe that's why we haven't been contacted by life on other planets, because they all think we are a bunch of dinosaurs. Or they've already been and discovered no intelligent life. Or maybe we are the first intelligent life to form. Clouds in general blow my mind. Do you know how many different types of clouds there are? Like at least 5. But the fact that a mass of water vapor can change into different forms is just crazy. Also the fact that they are giant floaty things in the sky that we're all just cool with. That those very same clusters of moisture and heat create some of the most destructive and deadly weather in the world, or that they create enough energy to turn air lethal, capable of whipping debris up to speeds of over 250 miles per hour that are capable of destroying homes and lives like nothing, or that the amount of energy harnessed in a single thunderhead per minute is more than we, all of humanity, can produce in a year, or that lightning is plasma created by the rubbing and friction of particles inside clouds. If the universe is expanding, what is it expanding to? What is past the universe that it is expanding to? I understand basically that it is just nothingness, but trying to comprehend nothingness is impossible. Just try. How often body cells are being replaced? Your stomach cells every 2 to 9 days. Your skin every 10 to 30 days. Lungs every 8 days. Makes you think how many times you've been made over. You can boil water by simple vacuum pressure alone. One weird fact about humans is that people with brown eyes actually have blue eyes under a top layer of brown pigment. There's some researcher who developed a laser that can zap that top layer of brown pigment so it drains from your eyes, hence leaving your eyes blue. The fact that we live on a floating rock in space. The brain named itself. That viruses pretty much hijack cells and turn them into virus-making factories that make different parts of the virus in different places of the cell. Like devious little robot aliens trying to kill us all. Viruses scare the hell out of me. That light can be used to make a sail in outer space. Thanks, physics textbook, it's the only thing I'll ever remember from this. Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr. were born in the same year, 1929. Betty White was born 7 years before Anne Frank. If you have 2 legs, you have more than the average amount of legs. That airplanes function. Like, dude, we can fly. You can light farts on fire. Black holes give me legit anxiety to think about. Remember, black holes don't have some magic gravity that sucks everything else in. Gravity is still gravity. If our sun were replaced with a black hole of the same mass instantaneously, we would not get sucked into it. We'd all die for other reasons, but not black hole shenanigans. Adult women cannot throw things as far as adult men, as a result of an evolutionary mechanism. When men throw something, they instinctively lock their wrists and break it properly to generate more force. Women don't have any of this wrist action when throwing. It is suggested that this innate behavior in males is a heritable trait from their ancestors who used to hunt for food. I don't know if someone posted this already, but the idea that some of the stars you are seeing in the sky no longer exist and haven't for a long time. It's just that their light is taking so long to reach your eyes, you're literally seeing the past. My intro to Astro professor was fond of using Star Wars examples. To illustrate distance, he used the asteroid field sequence from Empire, revealing the very exciting fact that real asteroids in asteroid belts are far apart, and it's so dark out there that there's not only any chance of a collision, but if you were standing in one, you wouldn't even see the others. You'd just think that you were a tiny part of a space rock. Want to know how many seconds it takes for you to drive a mile at a certain speed? Just take 3,600 and divide it by your miles per hour. This works with kilometers and kilometers per hour too. However, as you increase your speed, it doesn't decrease the time it takes to go a mile linearly. At 10 miles per hour, it takes 6 minutes. At 15 miles per hour, it takes 4 minutes. At 20 miles per hour, it takes 3. At 30 miles per hour, it takes 2 minutes. And at 60 miles per hour, it takes 1 minute. So you see more change in the time needed to go a mile at lower speeds than higher speeds. At 75 miles per hour, it takes 48 seconds, and at 80 miles per hour, it takes 45 seconds. That means that you would have to go 20 miles going a constant 80 miles per hour instead of 75 miles per hour just to shave 1 minute off your trip. So slow down. It's literally not worth it. The sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, but the moon is 400 times closer, so they look the same size. It's insane. Hydrogen left alone in a large enough quantity for a sufficient length of time will gain sentience. A human red blood cell completes a circuit of the whole body in about 60 seconds. There is little difference between the atoms in your fingertips and the surrounding air. Our heart is beating from before we are born to the day we die, non-stop all the time. Quantum tunneling. Basically, if you toss a golf ball at a brick wall, you would expect it to bounce off the wall, but there's a very, very tiny chance that the golf ball will just end up on the other side of the wall. I can't really say it will go through the wall, and I can't really say how long it will take to get there. The math actually ends up giving you an imaginary number when you calculate the time. But anyway, the odds that it would happen are so small that you would have to keep doing it over and over again for many, many times longer than the age of the universe to have any reasonable chance of seeing it happen. When you scale down to the size of electrons, though, there are just so many of them that you don't have to keep trying for very long. Also, the probability of popping through that wall increases at smaller sizes. So if you put a wall between two electrodes and bounce some electrons off that wall, once in a while one will pop through the wall with quantum tunneling. And because an electron that moves from one side of the wall to the other means that you have a measurable electric current, we can measure it. We can reliably predict the number of electrons that will magically pop through that wall and measure the current caused by it. This is the main idea behind how flash memory sticks work. That swans can be gay. That you actually have a 0.2 to 0.3 second lag on everything you perceive. Your brain just tricks you into thinking you don't. Anthropic coincidences. The infinitesimally small cause and effect that led to the creation of the human race, let alone your own life. The average person has one fallopian tube. Sleep. We do it about a third of our life, and one of the best explanations is because we get tired. That we have to take on faith that we exist. This one is what I used to screw with my head when I feel too sane. Everything we perceive is measured by our senses and delivered to our brains. We know this. However, if something were able to completely simulate the signals our nerves send to our brain, we wouldn't be able to tell. Or even more worrisome, if something had always been simulating signals to our brain, we would never be any wiser, because we'd never have had any real sensory input compared to it. Basically, our entire perception of reality is taken on faith that we are receiving data from our sensory organs. Similarly, we have no way to prove our memories are real. Not ultimately. We can verify them with things we look up, but if those records could somehow be created, we have no way to show whether they are real or not real. Basically, we have no surefire way to be certain existence didn't start at this very moment, every moment. I got a couple. 1, we know more about outer space than we do our own oceans, and 2, we are either alone in the universe or we are not. However, both are equally as terrifying. That there is a point at which space just ends. I'm so curious what would happen if you got that far. That boundary is always getting farther away, yes, but that doesn't mean it's not there. That the act of observing electrons on the quantum level changes the way that they behave. 1. There is a real probability that we can calculate that all of the air in a given room will suddenly all rush into one corner all at once and then come shooting back out to refill the space. 2. At the most basic quantum level that we have been able to test so far, everything in the universe is made up of waves and probability fields. There are even particles that literally pop in and out of existence and follow no observable patterns of behavior or interaction. 3. We humans are made of the same matter as everything else. We are part of the universe, so when we experience life in this universe, we are the universe experiencing itself. That we are within a solar system within a galaxy that is just one of over 100 billion galaxies. Of all the varieties and differences in breeds of dogs, they are still only one species. More so, wolves and dogs are interbred. Huskies are wolves and dogs. Chow chows are odd. They have black saliva. There's enough water in Lake Superior to cover the entire landmass of North and South America to a depth of 1 foot. The pool on board the Titanic is still full after all these years. How can I make a post like this crossing the barriers of time and space and sharing with millions of unknown people? It blows my mind. Peregrine falcons fly so fast that the airflow around their nostrils would hit their brain and knock them unconscious if it weren't for the deflecting cones they have evolved. Most of the comments are about physics, so I'll do biology. The fact that many fungus have more than just one sex gender. There is male, female, A, B, C, D, and they can reproduce A times B, male times C, female times A, etc., and you get different results. And if there is nothing to reproduce with, they go for asexual reproduction until there is someone to mate with. Fungi are crazy. Time slows near supermassive objects and near the speed of light. My brain can't conceive of the implications of time being changed in any way. Forget supermassive objects. The further from gravity you are, time changes. So for those of us living in apartments or working in high-rises, time is actually moving slower for those of us walking on the street. The difference is extremely minuscule and you'll never notice it, but it's there. The existence of microscopic wasps smaller than an amoeba. Megaphragma mimerapen. I don't know whether to be scared or intrigued. The existence of narwhals. Human beings have walked on the surface of the moon and come back safely. Even crazier, they accomplished this only 66 years after the first flight. We went from not being able to fly to landing on the surface of the moon and coming back safely in 66 years. That's astounding. An oldie but a goodie, the summit of Mount Everest is marine limestone. How we built a machine able to take two protons, accelerate them to almost the speed of light, hit them with each other, and watch what will happen. While we have 3 cones to see color, roughly red, green, and blue, some people have a 4th cone that allows them to see a broader spectrum of color. That human beings actually created antimatter, not retrieved from space or found, but created. There are an infinite amount of numbers between 1 and 2, but none of them are 3. That the time between first flight and dropping an atomic bomb is less than 50 years. Theory of relativity. The past isn't gone and the future isn't yet to be. They are all equally real and material. We only experience time because our consciousness is the product of time-bound electrochemical interactions in our brain, which means past, present, and even future are all equally real and present, and time as we know it is nothing more than an illusion. Procreating. I have 2 kids and they both grew inside my tummy, and now they are living, breathing, walking, talking human beings. And the fact that I was once in my mom's tummy and now I'm an adult, it's crazy. It continues to blow my mind. The results of the double-slit experiment have to be the most counterintuitive revelations in physics, which in itself is a field riddled with counterintuitive revelations. Magenta is only the interpretation of both the red and blue cones firing simultaneously. It physically does not exist. There is no magenta frequency of light. Race car spelled backwards is race car. There have been a few on the passage of time, but I haven't seen this particular one yet. The fact that time is relatively faster the older that you are. Imagine it like this. At 1 year old, 1 year is your whole life. That's a long time, but fast forward to 10 years old, now 1 year nearly isn't as long, as it's only 1/10 of your life. Fast forward to 50, now 1 year is only 1/50th of your life, which now doesn't seem long at all. And 25 years is half your life, and starts to not seem long either. A year for me as a 19-year-old could seem like a totally different thing than a year for you would be. Always think about this. The fact that I'm going to die one day, and it's going to be just like it was before I was conceived. That the universe is limitless. Even if you were traveling on a particle that was created just after the Big Bang and reaching further away than anything else, beyond that, there is nothing. Not nothing as an empty space, but space and time does not even exist there. The universe is creating its own space and time. If I remember correctly, time did not exist before the Big Bang because everything was exactly the same. Nothing ever changed. Suddenly, Big Bang. Then things are different from one moment to the next. Not a fact, but I think it is sad that other life exists and that we may never meet them due to the distance between us. There was a point when I was the youngest person on Earth. When you are exactly half the age of your mother, that is the age that they were when they had you. It's impossible to actually touch something. The sensation we perceive as touching is actually just electrons repelling each other, meaning they can't actually touch. That the Sun comprises more than 99% of all matter in the solar system, and Jupiter is about 95% of the remainder. We are a cosmic rounding error. This isn't quite true. I just checked, and Jupiter is not even 4 times as massive as Saturn alone, so it can't possibly account for 95% excluding the Sun. Looks more like 60% at most. If you could fold a paper in 280 times, it would be as wide as a galaxy. I wouldn't say it as 100% fact because dates and archaeology are messy, but there is proof that there were early human species for roughly 2.5 million years. Modern humans, or Homo sapiens, have hardly been around for 200,000 and have been anatomically similar to today's humans for only 75,000 years. Peanuts are neither pea or a nut. Empty space boils with particles popping into and out of existence. Electrons don't rotate around protons like mini planets around a sun. They kind of manifest in a probability cloud. Particles have spin, but what is spinning? Magnetic lines of force. They're like ripples in the what? That there are approximately 100 trillion bacteria cells in our body. This makes up about 90% of us. So what are we? The 10% human or the bacteria? Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a fact you'd like to share, please do so in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when our next video is available. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.